The microphone at Maple Hills Elementary had one job: say good evening and please sign the volunteer clipboard by the door. Instead, when I clicked it on, it shrieked like a kettle on a camp stove, and every head in the cafeteria snapped toward me. Long folding tables, poster boards about Vision 2030, Costco coffee in those cardboard boxes bleeding into Dixie cups, a Girl Scout cookie pyramid on the back table. The principal stood under the American flag in his Patagonia vest like a TED Talk that grew legs, and my wife, my cheating wife, the phrase tasted like a paper cut on the tongue, sat 3 chairs from him, cheeks bright from a sprint of lipstick in a school bathroom mirror. We were supposed to be discussing bus routes and a robotics grant. Instead, I had a folder. My folder. The folder of doomsday. The folder of betrayal. The folder of text messages and strange receipts and a printout of a calendar invite that said visioning session after hours. In parentheses, someone had typed BYO Seltzer. "Let's please stay on the agenda," the principal said, his smile stretched thin as painter's tape. "We are absolutely on the agenda," I said, the mic squealing again because the little black speaker above the whiteboard was angled straight at my face. Safety. Transparency. The fact that my wife and the man paid with my property taxes have been conducting off-campus professional development. A hush dropped. Even the PTA treasurer stopped clacking her calculator. You could hear the inflatable coyote mascot, the Maple Hills Coyotes, deflating softly in the hallway, a long sigh of air like the universe itself giving up on subtlety. My wife blinked like the fluorescent lights were a new form of weather. "Evan," she hissed, using my name like a car alarm nobody reported. "Sit down. We can talk at home. For the family." "For the family?" The word slid around the room and checked the expiration date on our marriage. "We are talking about family. We are talking about infidelity, about cheating and humiliation in front of the people who brought chicken tenders in crock pots." Someone in the back coughed or laughed or both. The principal lifted a hand. I had always hated how he lifted his hand, as if he were the owner of silence. "We don't do personal matters at the parent meeting." "That's exactly what people say right before a reveal," I said. "Every parent meeting movie scene ever ends with a reveal. And tonight is that." I opened the folder, and the air in the room tilted. Pages fanned like a magician's trick. Screenshots, chats with emojis that would make a nun blush, and a receipt from the Blue Heron Motel, where the O in Heron had been slapped on crooked since 1998. A stack of color printouts showing 2 people who looked exactly like my wife and the principal walking, too close, past a trophy case full of bowling awards no one remembered winning. They weren't explicit enough to be obscene, but the pose was the dictionary definition of unmistakable. Revenge hummed in my chest like a misfiring engine. I had walked into this cafeteria for vengeance, for the tender, undercooked fantasy of public justice. But here's where the story reverses direction, because parody loves a U-turn. What I thought would be straight, sober devastation turned into a conspiracy theory potluck where everyone brought their wildest dish. Because before I could lay the photos on the table, Mrs. Rodriguez from the safety committee jumped up and yelled, "Tell them about the tunnels!" And then Mr. Whitaker from robotics shouted, "Tell them about the time loop!" And the librarian, God bless her and her barcode scanner, muttered, "We shouldn't have broken the bell." None of that was on the agenda, but it was, in its way, the whole agenda. I didn't know it yet, but this suburban cafeteria was a thin door in the drywall of reality, and betrayal had a crawl space. If this were a serious documentary, I'd roll tasteful B-roll, a pickup truck idling in a driveway at dawn, my hands shaking as I glue a tiny GPS tracker under a bumper, a voiceover about love and the slow rot of trust. But we don't have that documentary. We have me, Evan, sweating in a Maple Hills hoodie, pretending my neighbor's leaf blower is less loud than it is while I rewind Ring doorbell footage, because I think the principal has the same shoes as the man who delivered our PTA t-shirts. This is where the satire crept in, the parody of the suburban detective. I joined next door. I friended the PTA on Facebook. I learned the difference between meeting and planning session. I learned that Orange Theory at 5:15 a.m. is apparently self-care, which in our zip code is code for possible alibi. It started with a smell. Not perfume, more like printer toner and peppermint, the breath of a copier machine. My wife is a teacher, and she wore that scent home the way firefighters carry smoke. But lately, it clung to her differently, a textured smell like the aftertaste of a secret. Then came late-night texts from a contact saved as R. She said it was a parent. It wasn't a parent. It was R like ringleader, as in ring of keys to the school, and ring doorbell footage proves nothing if the angle is wrong. The first clue landed in my lap like a flyer. Vision 2030 night, childcare provided. She was giddy about it. The principal asked her to co-chair. Co-chair is such an innocent term. It's a seesaw of power that looks level until you realize one person is heavier. I went to school early one morning, the kind of early that makes custodians suspicious. The building had a hum, like a refrigerator running. In the glass of the locked front doors, I saw my own face looking tired and someone else's face looking pleased. The principal, cutting across the lobby. He wore that Patagonia vest, the universal flag of men who schedule things. On the corkboard was a map. Exits here, fire assembly there, a gray square labeled boiler, and a faded laminated poster about bullying stops here, which felt ironically on brand because nothing bullies like a secret. I used my best dad superpower, pretending to have legitimate business. My son left his Chromebook, I told the secretary, holding a lunchbox as a prop. Room 23, Mrs. Carter. The secretary said, "Of course." She didn't know I already had the Chromebook. The lunchbox was empty. I'm not proud, but I am thorough when betrayal chooses my address. The hallways smelled like old markers and hope. Murals of handprints, a mosaic coyote. I moved softly, which is hard when your whole body is a marching band. I heard voices near the gym, my wife's laugh, an extra sugar packet stirred into coffee, and then a lower, careful voice that made everything sound official. "After hours has to stay off the shared calendar," the careful voice said. "We don't want the board asking questions before the pitch is ready." The pitch? I whispered to a trophy. That night, after bedtime stories and the clunk of the dryer, she said she was going back to school for binder organization. I drove separately and parked behind the cafeteria dumpster where raccoons do their dirty work. Through the little square window in the side door, I saw them in the gym, standing too close on a floor with three-point lines, bathed in the weird bluish light of a school at night. No one should look romantic under those lights, but infidelity is an artist. It makes galleries everywhere. I took a picture I never wanted to take. Then I took too many, because anger is a photographer who doesn't know when to stop clicking. This is where the fantasy thread stitched in, where my brain began seeing shapes. On the wall above them hung the school bell, dead since the new sound system came in. Every district email said, "The bell remains as a symbol." I swear it vibrated. I swear it pulsed like a heartbeat. I only swear this to you, not to a judge or a counselor, that time hiccuped and looped, and their hands found the same awkward choreography twice. Did I watch 1 minute repeat? Was it fluorescence and rage? Was it a loop laid by a school with a secret budget line item called traditions? Whatever it wasn't normal. When they left, they didn't go toward the front. They went toward the boiler. The boilers in schools are cathedrals to heat. They also hide doors. The PTA does not call itself a secret society. It calls itself a community. It calls itself the village. But stand in a school basement with a banker's box of spiritware and tell me you don't smell ritual. The door by the boiler opened with a groan, unbefitting a building erected with a bond measure, and beyond lay a corridor that cheated the blueprint. Painted cinder block, pipes sweating, a sign that said, "Custodial only," and under it, in faded Sharpie, "No kids, no board members, no fun." Funny, right? If you don't laugh, the floor tilts. I followed at a distance and heard voices, not whispers, civic tones, meeting tones, tones that expect minutes and action items. There was a room, low-ceilinged, long table. On it, A trifold board, like the ones at science fair, labeled in bubble letters. Vision Circle. In the center, not kidding, sat the bell, taken from its hook, wired with some Arduino nonsense and a portable Bluetooth speaker. The principal tapped it with a pencil and the air undulated. My wife looked starstruck, the way she looked at fireworks when we were 25 and drunk on futures. Mrs. Rodriguez, the safety committee woman who would later shout about tunnels, stood there with a reflective vest like armor. The librarian held her scanner like a wand. The treasurer counted petty cash into neat piles next to stacks of Blue Heron Motel receipts labeled Retreat. The principal, in his vest of 1,000 meetings, cleared his throat. "Welcome to the Order of the Trifold," he said. "The board thinks we're a booster club. They don't understand that in this town, education is a faith tradition. We are here to keep it, even when the board cycles, even when superintendents come and go. We are here to preserve the bell, and we are here to guide the narrative." "Guide the narrative," they murmured, like a pledge that could be printed on a tea towel. My wife smiled in a way she did not smile at me anymore. She had become earnest for someone else. This is its own form of cheating. "The vision night will be our biggest yet," she said. "Parents need to feel we're listening. They need to feel safe, like the family around the table." Family. That word again, weaponized as decor. The librarian scanned the bell. The speaker burped a sound like a heart monitor being unplugged. The principal touched my wife's elbow. The touch was small, allowable in any HR handbook. It was also an accelerant. Revenge is a flare gun in your pocket. You hope you'll never have to use it, but it makes you stand straighter knowing it's there. I leaned in the doorway, my phone warm in my hand, and I recorded. Not because I wanted to go viral, because I wanted the truth to exist somewhere other than my bloodstream. Then I did the single stupidest and smartest thing I've ever done. I stepped on a mop bucket. It squeaked like a rat playing a trumpet. The room froze. The librarian pointed her scanner and a red laser found my chest. "Evan?" my wife said, like she had discovered a bear in the pantry. "What are you doing down here?" "Finding the Chromebook," I said, because lies sound better if they're recycled. The principal's professionalism wrapped me like cold plastic. "You can't be down here," he said. "Liability." "Liability," I repeated. "Like taking a teacher to a motel and paying with cash from a bake sale?" The treasurer clutched her calculator. Mrs. Rodriguez whispered, "I told you we should use Venmo." "Nothing illegal is happening," the principal said, and then added that arrogant footnote, "Cruel men love, as far as you know." "That's the thing about betrayal," I said. "You rarely know as far as you think, but I know enough." I turned to go because the bell throbbed again and my brain wobbled. The librarian, sweet, bookish Andrea, stepped between me and the hall. "You can't tell them," she said quietly. "About the bell. About the loop. They'll shut us down. The vision night keeps this school alive." "Vision night?" I said. "You mean the parent meeting where I'm supposed to clap for a slideshow while the principal auditions for my wife's future?" The librarian flinched. "It's not like that," she said, which is the opening line of every love story and every lie. When I reached the parking lot, the world rewound half a second. The same raccoon looked up from the same pizza crust. A sprinkler ticked the same syllables. It wasn't just in my head. The bell's small power reached even here. The school had built a machine out of tradition and Wi-Fi, out of nostalgia and an Arduino. The Order of the Trifold had broken time a little, the way towns like ours break children a little with expectations dressed as opportunities. If they could bend the evening by an inch, maybe two people could think they were getting away with something enormous. So I set my trap. Not a cruel trap, just a narrative trap. I signed up for public comment at the parent meeting. I printed photos on glossy paper because shame is shinier when laminated. I wrote a speech that began, "This isn't about money," which meant it absolutely was about money, and ended with, "We deserve better." I didn't know yet that better, like the bell, comes with feedback. Which brings us back to the cafeteria with the mic that hated me, to the moment where every adult in town looked at me like I was either a hero or a live wire. I held up the folder. The principal held his breath. My cheating wife held her breath too, and I heard both of their little private C's. I didn't want to do this here, I lied. But we're out of hallway. I started with the receipts. The Blue Heron Motel is the sort of place that does not require explanations. Everyone in Maple Hills understands what it is for. The treasurer made a sound like a stapler being jammed. I laid down the printouts of texts. No explicit words, bless the screenshot edit function, but enough coded visioning to make a pastor faint. I played a 30-second clip from my phone, the principal's hand on my wife's elbow, the bell humming, Mrs. Rodriguez whispering about tunnels. Laughter skittered across the tiles because conspiracy always sounds funny until you're inside it. Then the bell, moved from the basement to the stage for historical context, gave one soft electronic burp. The Bluetooth speaker blinked, the air bent, and a weird, nudging déjà vu rippled through the crowd, the same cough, the same drip from the soda machine, the same toddler squeal on repeat like a stuck tick-tock. I watched the principal realize what I had brought up with me, not just receipts, but the machine he'd been building. He lunged for the bell. The librarian flinched like she'd seen this exact movement once already tonight. Because she had. Because we had all just had it. "Stop," my wife said, but the word arrived twice. Stop, stop. Chaos is strangely civic when it wears lanyards. People raised hands even as they yelled. A school board member stood and said, "Point of order," in a voice usually reserved for budget votes. I saw the future of Maple Hills pictured on that trifold board, smiling kids, tasteful clip art. And then I saw its present. The principal's face blanched, my wife's face pleading, my folder spread like a crime scene in a paper mill. I wanted revenge. I really, truly wanted it, the hot, clean line of it. I wanted the principal to be escorted out and my wife to admit everything and the town to nod at me like I had saved them from a dragon in a polo shirt. The word revenge glowed in my mind the way exit signs glow in a dark theater. But the bell hiccuped again and the moment rewound a stitch. I watched myself lift the photo a second time and heard the same little gasp from the PTO president, and I thought, if time is giving me a do-over, what am I supposed to do over? Here's what I hadn't planned. My wife staring at me and saying into the squealy mic, "He's not wrong." A glitch in the room. Then, "But he isn't right about everything either." The crowd's surprise pivoted to a new axis. "We did wrong," she said, and the word we hurt more than any receipt. "Infidelity is wrong. I betrayed my family. I own that. But this public spectacle, is a different kind of betrayal. It turns a marriage into a pep rally." A murmur. Someone whispered, "She said betrayed too," like it was a tie game. She turned to the principal. "And you used our cause to create a club. You love the optics more than the kids. You broke the bell." The principal's mouth opened and closed like he had just remembered he'd left something on the stove. "The bell is symbolic," he said. "It's about rhythm. It's about school spirit. It's about control," the librarian said softly and put her scanner on the table like a badge. The board member seized the mic with the authority of an old lion. "We will be adjourning," she said, voice like a gavel. "There will be an investigation into any misuse of funds. There will be changes." She looked at me like a doctor telling a teenager to hydrate. "There will also be consequences for turning our shared spaces into theaters for private revenge." I wanted to argue. Instead, the bell shivered and the moment offered itself again. I felt like I was standing in one of those superhero movies where a character can freeze everything and walk around rearranging the pieces. I looked at the folder and saw that it was both evidence and a weapon, and that I would never unpull the trigger of humiliation. I thought about my son's art tacked to our fridge with a magnet shaped like a pretzel, about the way toxic love dresses up as devotion and walks you to a cliff, about how family, when it's real, is not the same as a brand. So I did the bravest, dumbest thing. I took back one photo, then another. The crowd, rewinding and replaying, saw me do it 3 times. It felt like erasing the chalk line around a body. "This isn't a courtroom," I said at last, my voice lower, the mic gentler now, like it finally remembered it was an instrument. It's a cafeteria. We were supposed to talk about prom parking. I came in here for revenge, and I dressed it up in words like transparency and accountability because that's how we do revenge in our zip code. We make it look like leadership. I'm hurt. I'm furious. My wife is a cheating wife, and that sentence will always lay tracks through my head. But I have to stop before I build a train I don't want to ride. My wife started crying in the unglamorous way people cry under fluorescent lights. The principal stepped forward, and the librarian put a hand out and said, "Don't," like she had also done twice already tonight. The board adjourned. People shuffled. The bell clicked off with a little cartoon glitch, and time, mercifully, stopped behaving like a screensaver. Later, after official statements and unofficial gossip, after the principal requested leave and the order of the trifold sunsetted, after the town's Facebook group made me a folk hero for 3 days and then pivoted to arguing about turf on the soccer field, I drove home on the quiet streets of Maple Hills. The lawns looked smug in the moonlight. In the kitchen, my wife sat at the island stool where she paid bills and graded papers and texted someone who had become a mirror. We talked like people who knew the house had a crack and the foundation guy was coming on Tuesday. We said words like separation and boundaries and attorney, and also words like childhood and school drop-off and the dumb coyote mascot. We didn't fix it. Nobody fixes it in one night, no matter how good the speech is. At 3 a.m., I woke to the faintest jingle. In the stillness of our suburb, the bell rang once, like a ghost remembering its job. I went outside to the porch, and the air tasted like wet pavement and the neighbor's dryer sheets. The bell would be boxed up tomorrow, cataloged, stored. Tradition would cool. I realized, looking at the quiet street, that conspiracy is just community with the lights off, and that fantasy is how grief keeps itself entertained. In the morning, I would tell my son that Mom and Dad were taking a break, and I would do it without making his school his enemy. I would take him to the diner with the sticky maple syrup bottles and let him pour his own pancakes into snaking shapes. We would sit in a booth under a photograph of a team no one remembers, and I would choose not to loop, not to replay, not to press the bell for one more do-over. I would choose forward. The town moved on as towns do, slowly, then all at once. A new interim principal with gentle shoes. A PTA bake sale run, not like a covert op, but like a bake sale. A board meeting where no one said vision and everyone said kids. My wife and I drafted a legal separation that felt like building an airplane while it's already in the sky. We did it with a mediator who used the word family correctly, quietly, like a candle, not a logo. I changed the passcode on our streaming services, and she took her mug collection, and I kept the Dutch oven because everybody always keeps the Dutch oven. We learned the famous lesson you only learn the hard way. Cheating is not a plot twist. It's a weather system. It soaks everything, and then the sun comes out and you live in a new climate. Sometimes in traffic by the school pickup line, I think about the version of me who poured humiliation over a cafeteria and called it justice. I forgive him a little more each week. I think about my wife, who wore earnestness like a new dress for someone else and then stood up and told the truth with a fluorescent light on her face. I don't forgive her yet, not in the tidy way people on podcasts insist forgiveness works, but I don't wake up wanting to burn the town down either. Healing is slower than revenge and less cinematic, but it doesn't need a mic. And the bell? On especially quiet nights, I swear I hear it, one single polite note, coming from the district storage unit, a reminder that time will try to loop and we can decide not to ride it. We can decide to be the version of ourselves that takes the photo back and steps away from the stage. We can decide that this was our family's broken thing and not our brand. If anybody asks how Maple Hills handled its scandal, I tell the short version. The town was shocked at the parent meeting. We all were. Then we made it boring again on purpose. That's not as fun to watch as revenge, but it's better to live in. And when my kid graduates from that gym with the weird blue light, I'll clap from the bleachers and let the building be a building again instead of a religion. I'll let the past be a folder I keep closed. And when the principal gives some new careful speech and the mic squeals, I won't think the universe is laughing at me. I'll think it's reminding me to move forward. Because Betrayal writes the first draft in anger, toxic love edits it in shame, cheating smuggles jokes into the margins, and family, real family, publishes the page you can live with.